Hey, it's Ben. So today we're going to be talking about a meditation practice that I developed. It's called Reconnecting with Your Core. And I know I talk about a lot of relationship issues, but one thing that's really important here is our relationship with ourselves. And unfortunately, many of us are become quite disconnected. Because as we go through our life, we're living in this world with like constant notifications by our smartphones, social media. We're scrolling and just all the interactions that we have with people. We have the constant texts then that we're firing back and forth, and then people that we encounter as we move around and about and through our work, and there's challenges um, we have deadlines to meet and responsibilities to fulfill, and it's a lot to keep up with. And even beyond that, even beyond the stresses or the challenges that directly impact us, there's all kinds of different things that are going on around us. There's all the um, bullshit right-wing culture wars. There's the hyper partisan toxic political environment, a lot of it driven by disinformation. There's actual, fighting wars where people are bombing the shit out of one another and just destroying lives and homes and everything, in Israel, Palestine, in Ukraine, and let's see, currently in Myanmar. And so all these things, it just creates like a sensory overload. And so as we go through our lives, how many of us just, and the fact too that a lot of people are lonely, just lacking connection. We're not spending as much time together. So there's this like continual sensory overload. But when we're dealing with all these challenges in different aspects of our lives, like in our work and our relationships, and then all the sensory bombardment that we experience on a daily basis, then it's more input, more stress, more than most of us can possibly cope with or process or digest. Our life experiences, our internal representations thereof, our emotional responses, all of that needs to go through a process by which it's digested. But at this time in history, we're like we have more coming at us than probably any time in recorded history. And it's more than that we can humanly process, at least on our own. But and that's all the more reason why it's so critically important for us to have a daily meditation practice. And I know a lot of people, or maybe think they're not so much into meditation, but if you're not taking active steps to get into your body and tune into your physical sensations and your emotions and working to process these internal responses, then it's going to back up in your body, which is what happens for like the majority of people. I see people all the time, and children, teens, 20-somethings, and haven't been on the planet as long, and so their bodies are much more vital and alive and don't hold quite so much stagnation. But as time goes on, and all this time that we're spending on our devices and scrolling, and just we're not sleeping as much, we don't spend as much time with one another. On one hand, deeply engaged personal one-on-one time, or even with groups of friends, but but the work demands are really high, and a lot of us are stressed out financially, swimming as fast as hard as we can just to hold our heads above water. And there's like student loan debts and medical expense and rent and house and car payments and all these things to keep up with. And to a large extent, much of the population is like lives in their heads, like not fully inhabiting their bodies. And much of our awareness is drawn outside of our bodies, into our phones. We're staring into our devices for hours a day. And even if we're not actually staring into the devices, we have podcasts on, or well, older generations, kept the TV on, the television running all the time. So they felt they had some company, so they weren't quite so alone. Stuff. But when we have all this stuff going on, and we're so overwhelmed, we're on this sensory overload, and we're distracted by it all, and our attention is pulled outside of ourselves, or at the very least, we're up in our heads. We don't really process all this experience, like our life experiences, like the stress of work, maybe if we have housemates, if we're in a primary relationship, with our intimate partner, or if we're living with family, or just whatever, if we have children, whatever, a lot of that doesn't get processed. But it doesn't just go away. We experience stress in the moment because all these things are happening, all these different interactions, and the stress that, we have these emotional or stress responses to the events that are occurring, either those that affect us directly or things we hear about in the news. And again, it's eliciting either emotional or stress, or a combination of the two. And the fact that we're not that connected, we're not all that present in our bodies. So a lot of us are just like scarcely aware, if not completely oblivious to a lot of these responses that are taking place within our own bodies. And so it's important for us to have a practice, whereas on a daily basis, we can drop down into our bodies, our feelings, our physical sensations, because when you hear these news reports and maybe you feel stressed out at work, all the dynamics going on, relational dynamics, or corporate politics, or whatever, and the pressure and the demands, or you have other kinds of drama playing out in your relationships. Even just conversations sometimes could be bring up issues and elicit emotional responses that are not all that pleasant. And so at the time you're experiencing it, you may feel something, but maybe not, maybe to some degree, varying degrees. But time keeps moving. And a lot of times we just forget, and we're feeling tired, depleted. We're pulled in all these different directions, scattered. A lot of people, those who do attempt to meditate, and I hear this a lot in conversations with people, things I read, things I hear, is that a lot of people attempt to sit down and meditate, and they're just wanting to quiet the mind. And yet there's all this noise or static, and they have trouble focusing. And their mind keeps running off into all these distractions and dramas, things that are going on around them. And of course that's going to happen, because so many of us, we're on sensory overload. But see, who sang that song? I think it was Quiet Riot or something. Not my favorite band by any means. I like more jazz, experimental, but they had that song anyway. It's called, what was it? Come on, feel the noise. So when you sit down to practice, and I encourage you to do this on a daily basis, just at some point or at different points along the way, just park your ass in a chair, the most comfortable chair you can find, close your eyes, and just begin to notice what it feels like in your body. Like, what are the physical sensations like? Is your body tired or fatigued, as I mentioned earlier? Is it are depleted? Do you feel a sense of, with your eyes closed, does it feel like you're just all over the place or scattered? Are there actual emotional responses, like feeling vulnerable and insecure? Or are you frustrated or stressed out about something that's going on? And there's a whole range or spectrum of emotional responses. There's also, sometimes there's excitement or anticipation. If you're spending time with someone that you love and adore, or just you're really into, or maybe you're going to do something that you're really into, like you have a trip planned, or you're going rock climbing, or whatever that you enjoy doing. But on a day-to-day basis, I'll take time to check in. And when I first started developing my own system of meditation practices, I was going through a really horrendous time. A lot of it was because when the traumas of my childhood and adolescence were playing out in my attempts to form relationships, that was evoking enormous amounts of painful feelings. But over time, as I continued along my own healing journey and I worked through more and more of that, then I wasn't in that horribly strung out, painful space. And it's like my whole internal reality changed. But just being human, as we go through life, there's all kinds of challenges. And different people I interact with, traveling in different cities, teaching classes on a daily basis, or not daily basis, I mean weekly basis. Before COVID, I was working with people individually, doing one-on-one sessions. And sometimes that's challenging because the work that I do, being trained by a traditional Native American doctor, natural medicine man, having gone through so many vision quests, this intense Native American healing practice where we go out to fast 4 days and nights alone in the mountains without food and water. And you experience this really intense power, this extraordinarily powerful force coming to my body. And sometimes it's like a near-death experience, and reliving portions of my life and past traumas and chewing up, digesting that, and cycling it through me, transforming it so that it's fuel for growth. But when you go through all this kind of intense practice, you develop this presence around you. And then to do the work I do, I act as a conduit so that the same kind of extraordinarily powerful healing presence works through me. And I have the varied response depending on the kind of individual. There are people who say they want to heal, but sometimes they're very resistant to actually facing those issues that have played out over the course of their life, those themes that they've struggled with, that are really dysfunctional themes. And there are a lot of people who just don't want to go to those places where they feel vulnerable. And so they spend their life just avoiding the issues, numbing to their feelings, distracting themselves. And so a lot of those individuals that sometimes they come to me, and because they get themselves into big messes and their lives are blowing up and their relationships are crashing and burning and their bodies are falling apart and so you have these people that approach me as if I'm Jesus or something, expecting healing, that I'm just going to magically take all their suffering away. But sometimes what happens is when they do the sessions and all these emotions come up, and it's like, and because they've run from it their entire lives, they don't want to face it. They don't want to go there. And so sometimes they get flaky, blow off appointments or something. That can be real stressful for me. So that's something I have to process. Fortunately, there are other individuals who have this profound desire, this commitment to do whatever it takes to heal and transform themselves. And these are the individuals who really thrive on this work, who want to stack multiple sessions up 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row or something, because it's extraordinarily powerful process that enables them to take those deeply traumatic wounds and all of those highly charged emotions, all that they've gone through, and crazy dysfunctional relationships, take all that, digest it, transform it so it becomes fuel for growth, and all of those highly charged emotions attached to it, and they come out the other side much lighter. It's building this whole new foundation, that and they attract healthier companions and with whom they could create more deeply meaningful and fulfilling relationships. But when I do end up having to deal with flaky ass people, who are just like avoiding, don't want to deal with stuff, and other challenges that I face in my life, and it's like everyone else, we all face challenges. But what I find that's really important is to just on a daily basis, to just take time where we need to sit down, close our eyes, and drop deeply into our body, deeply into all the feelings, all the bodily sensations, whatever you feel in response to what's happening. Sometimes I'm dealing with just the stresses or the challenges I face. There are other times where I drop in and there's nothing major, stressful, or no real drama playing out. There's just more of a sense of calm. I'll feel like a range of sensations. There are emotions that come up, but sometimes they're just more pleasant feelings. They're oftentimes memories of events that have occurred. But that's just my own example here. But in your own life, an important thing to do on a daily basis is, as I said, sit down at some point, find the quietest place you can in the most comfortable chair you can park yourself in, and sit down, close your eyes, and just start tuning in to whatever you feel. Any feelings, any sensations. Maybe you're just coming home from the long day at work. Well, how does that feel in your body? Because, for instance, a lot of people, after the long day, they come in, they have a few drinks, they start stuffing their mouth, they go on social media and they're scrolling, they're watching the idiot tube. And it's all that other additional sensory input. But there's the stress from work, but they don't get to process it because all that other sensory input is going in. And so it further numbs and distracts them. But the stress of work, day after day, you keep doing that. Maybe you don't like your job, maybe you hate it or hate your boss or find it boring or something, or just the pressure, the demands that you have to fulfill. And that stress and pressure and everything, it just builds up in your body. Or you have financial worries or something. And, you're stressed out about how you're going to cover your mortgage or other basic living expenses or medical bills or pay off the student loan debts. All these things, they elicit emotional responses. Are you going through stuff in your relationship with your significant other, or maybe you're wanting to be in a relationship with somebody else, and we're living in a time where people are flaky, don't return phone calls, don't show up on dates, ghost your ass, all that. It triggers all kinds of emotional responses. And there's challenges like maybe you have other dynamics playing out with siblings or with friends and neighbors, noisy ass neighbors, especially if you're living in an apartment or something. And as I said, the news, every night, all that disinformation. And I mean, it used to be, I remember back in the 80s, before conflict entrepreneurs like Rush Limbaugh and stuff came out, it's like the political discourse was a lot more sane. I mean, they would actually discuss issues, thoughtful discussion, and like, well, what about this approach? And well, I think this other approach is more feasible. And so there was this meaningful discussion instead of just this bombastic shouting and arguments and name calling, like, oh, you socialist and all this bullshit. But now this is just everyday reality, and but it's stressful, and all these things impact us, and it's going on every day. We can't escape from it, really. And so to the best of our ability, we need that time. If we're not thoroughly digesting our emotional responses and the stresses that we're internalizing, it doesn't go away. It accumulates within our bodies. And many people being so incredibly oblivious to, they're scarcely aware of what they're feeling. And they're, as I said, to varying degrees dissociated, living up in their heads and all that. So on a daily basis, the news, these interactions, the pressures, the demands, it elicits an emotional and stress responses. If we don't digest it, as I said, it doesn't just go away, it just accumulates, it builds up in our body. Day after day, it keeps building more and more. It's that residual builds up, and the emotions that we don't process or digest, they stagnate. And over time, it putrefies and it becomes this thick, heavy, congestive residue. And as I said, it just keeps accumulating more and more and more. And so every day, we need that time to just check in. And again, sit down, drop into your body, close your eyes, and just feel. What are the physical sensations? What does your body feel like? How does it feel emotionally? A lot of times I'll sit down and I just feel what's going on in my body and just start breathing. And if something needs to be addressed, it will just come up. Maybe there's some interaction I had with somebody. There's something going on in a relationship of mine, or concerns about, a lot of work-related concerns. It's a big challenge now for me, because this whole transitional space of not teaching the weekly in-person classes like I used to, and so I have to transition to bring everything online, and it's this massive learning curve, and there's a lot of stress with that. And writing articles and creating, just reaching people online. It's a whole different world. But anyway, I just tune in to what I'm feeling in my body, physically, emotionally. Question is, what are you feeling in your body in response to what's happening in your life? What's happening in intimate or not so intimate relationship if that person's not reciprocating your desire to be together? What's happening if you are with somebody and you're dealing with challenges in the relationship? What's happening in your work? And how does it feel in your body, physically and emotionally? Sometimes you could just sit down and close your eyes and tune into your body and just start breathing into the feelings and sensations that they're right there the moment you close your eyes. You can't escape them. And other times, maybe you could bring your employer, your supervisor, to the forefront of your awareness, or your coworkers, or maybe your housemate, or your significant other, or your children, if you have conflicts, if you're estranged from your children, or if some other crazy dynamics playing out, or if they're acting out or something. Just what's going on in your life? And again, what's going on in your life? How does it feel? Where are those feelings present within your body? Drop deeply into those feelings. Breathe very softly, very deeply. Allow the feelings to be what they are. Don't try to change them. Don't try to make them go away. If all you can do is 15, 20 minutes, okay, we'll do that. But if you can, extend the practice time. Go 30 minutes, go an hour, go longer. It's a much better use of time than scrolling on social media, for sure. Or much better use of time than staring into the idiot tube. Television, in other words. The more you practice, what happens is, as you drop into those emotions, physical sensations, you engage this deeper innate healing intelligence that resides within your own body and mind. And so what happens is, as you continue to breathe in from the depth of these feelings and sensations, you're not watching them from a distance. You're getting deeply in the middle of it all. You feel what you honestly feel, no matter how intense it is. Just stay with it and just keep breathing, keep following it. Go where it takes you. If you find yourself drifting up into thoughts, bring your ass right back down into your feelings and keep reconnecting with your feelings and breathing into them. Because as you do so, they go through this whole process of transformation. You digest them, you assimilate them, you're digesting your experience, your emotional responses, and and by doing so, they become transformed. You digest them, they become fuel for growth. Again, I do this practice every day. All of us need to be doing this practice every day. Also, as I've said in other videos, I encourage you to be making use of the most effective therapeutic interventions. If you're working with a psychotherapist, for instance, you're doing this practice, you're connecting with your emotions, you're processing them, you're going to make way more headway in the work you do with the psychotherapist. I like to do deep tissue body work whenever I get the opportunity, because a lot of these emotions, they get trapped in our bodies, and you do the body work, it breaks a lot of that emotion loose, and the emotions are more accessible. I could feel them more. They're easier to feel them. If you have an opportunity, work with me one-on-one. You do sessions with a gifted healer such as myself, then it takes all these highly charged emotions and all that you're going through in your life, whether it's struggles in your relationship or professionally or just whatever aspect of life. And you go into this very deep, almost dreamlike state. I say almost, it is at times. And that's being digested, transformed. It's building much healthier foundation. And so all that is transformed so that it becomes fuel for your continued growth. Or if you're hardcore like me, you could even go on the vision quest where I go out to sit the 4 days and nights, no food, no water, alone in the mountains. But I don't think most of you are going to go through the vision quest. But the most intense the most powerful most people will do is like working one-on-one with a gifted healer, as I was saying. But do your practice on a daily basis and make use of the most powerful therapeutic interventions as you do so. Instead of like probably the majority of people, not probably, it is the majority of people, day after day is just, we go through a lot in our lives. Life in this modern day world, there's a lot to deal with, a lot of stresses. We're on sensory overload. But as you do this practice, it helps you to stay current. And the more you do this practice, what happens too is that you're breathing through the difficult emotions or the stresses. And you see, all those emotions and those stresses, what happens is over time, they just, as I said, they keep accumulating. So it's just like layer upon layer of stress and unprocessed emotion. And we all have this deep inner core being that resides within us. And that deep inner core being, that's like our own individual connection to like a higher power. I'm not religious, but I feel that all of us, like, I feel like there is this greater presence that animates all life here in this world and within all creation, for that matter, within the universe. But anyway, we all have this connection to a higher power, and we have this deep inner core that resides within. But as you're going through life and you're dealing with, the stress of work and stressful living situations and financial stress and craziness in your relationship and all the overstimulation of television and our devices and social media and all that stuff, it's all that sensory input that we don't process, all that stress, all that emotion, it just accumulates. It keeps accumulating within our bodies. But when we can work with it constructively, as I've been describing, the practice I've been describing, and we digest those stresses and those emotions, and so we combine the practice too with the most effective therapeutic interventions, it starts stripping off these layers that build up. And then this deep core of our being that resides within us, we connect with this core. And the more we do practice and we make use of these interventions, our connection with this core deepens, and this core presence within us grows stronger. And so we go out into the world, and this presence, we carry it with us. And as we keep doing practice, the presence grows stronger. The more we work constructively with our emotions, we process them, we process the stresses. Again, doing this practice, it awakens this innate healing intelligence residing deep within you. And as you do that, it awakens, it engages, activates your brain, your mind, your body's innate healing intelligence, this deep, creative problem-solving capability. So you gain insights, you gain understanding. You're able to come up with creative, workable solutions to address the challenges that you face. It makes it easier to just resolve issues, bring these issues to resolution so that you can deal with that, get it taken care of, and then move on down the road. You can be a lot more productive, a lot more effective. You become more highly functional. So this is a very powerful, practical meditation practice that we all need to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you could do something else if you're living in an ashram or monastery somewhere, although I think it'll benefit you there too. But especially if you're living in this modern day world with all this intensity and overstimulation and pressure and demands, this is one of the most basic, essential practices, meditation practices you can ever do. It will keep you more grounded. It will enable you to be more productive. It will decrease your stress levels. It'll help you to work through issues, to manage your emotions more effectively. So that means there's less anxiety, less depression, less overwhelm. It's going to put you in a lot better space. So anyway, I think I covered everything I need to say for today. So I am offering limited. I have limited number of amount of time available to do this, but I am offering a limited number of, depending on what's going on with you. Maybe you're facing other kinds of challenges. So I'd call it a challenge resolution session. If you're dealing with heartache, or your relationships are blowing up on you, call it a heart mending strategy session. So either way, if you feel the need, then feel free to go to the link I'll post below this video. You can schedule your own 20-minute either challenge resolution, heart mending strategy session, or just reach out to me. I mean, I do work individually. The individual sessions are extraordinarily powerful. And I'll tell you more about it when we get a chance to talk. So covered a lot of ground. You have a lot to think about here, but more than just think, do your practice every day. And if you have questions, let me know. Reach out to me and I'll address them. Bye now.